Hi guys, Jessica here from the Healing Hands Duo, and today I'm here with Kevin, and we wanted to talk about something that we're a little bit concerned about. For the last, I would say 6 months, we have been getting notices to install smart meters in our home that have to do with the water system. A lot of you guys are going to say, well, we already have smart meters on our house for the electrical system. They put them in years ago. Yes, that is true, but they are now trying to convert over the smart water meters in all of our homes. So the concerns that we have is that these meters don't get installed just outside of your home. They actually need to gain access to the premises of your home and come into the basement or wherever it is that you have your smart meter and install them in your home. Kevin, being an EMF specialist, we're really concerned about the EMF readings that we've received off some of these already. He's gone to clients' homes and hasn't been impressed with the meter readings that he's receiving. However, back in the early spring, I would say it was, we received our very first notice to have us set up an appointment for them to come in and do this. We kind of put it aside because we knew that we didn't want one. Received another notice maybe like a month or two later. At that point, I was like I was a bit concerned because I had heard that what they were doing was, especially out in Ottawa, there were people that were essentially refusing to put these in their homes. So they, in fact, cut off people's water, which I think was absolutely asinine and criminal. So Kevin, in fact, called them. And no, what happened at first was actually I reached out to somebody because I got somebody on the phone. So I didn't understand some of the technology that he was talking to me about. So I said, you know what, I'm going to get my husband to call you. Didn't do it right away. So we actually got a third notice. And I think by that point, that's when you decided, you know what, I better call them back. And you did. You got somebody on the phone. So if you can let people know where things were left, because we still don't have one. It's been, what, 6 to 7 months. We still don't have one installed. At this point, they've given up essentially calling us. We haven't gotten any more notices. We did have somebody come to the door and in fact give us a fourth notice at the door. But since then, it's been several months now and we haven't heard from anybody. So if you could let people know, sorry, excuse me. You can let people know what you said to the guy when you called him.
Yeah, he reached out to me actually first. He actually got my number. He texted me and we did a little text dialogue back and forth. He was just one of the supervisors in charge of the installations. And he was just asking me, if there were any concerns about the installation. We've sent you many notices already. We've tried to call you. Just wondering if I could be of any support. If you have any concerns about the technology or the installation, whatever, just I'm here to help, which was nice. It was a nice introduction at first. And I basically told him, my background, some of the work that I'm doing, and some of the concerns I had. And he quickly replied back with a lot of information about the technology, specifically to the devices that they're putting on people's homes. So I got to read a little bit about the technology they're using and all that stuff. And I basically just, told him I have some concerns here, and I'd really like to talk to somebody in charge of the installation, somebody of, more of a managerial position that I can address some of these concerns. That person, I don't remember his name, but he was in charge. He was more of the project manager and of everything that was happening here. So he actually reached out to me. He called me, and I was at work. I was busy at the time, so I never had a chance to take his phone call. But he just said, "Give me a call back right away. I'd love to have a chat." And I did try and call him back. I actually tried to call him back up to 3 times, each leaving messages trying to get him to call me back. So it was a little bit of phone tag going on there, but I never really actually got a chance to speak with him. And after about the third try, I just, kind of gave up. I put the ball in his court saying, just, you have my number, give me a call. I'd love to chat. I want to talk about some of the concerns I have. And I never did hear back from him. And this
Okay.
was back in the summer. I think this was June, the last time I ever talked to him.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing. I think we received the last notice probably. Well, the last notice I think came through
I
just
don't
like
think
2 or 3 months ago.
I don't think we've had anything since.
I think we have
Not,
received
not that
one.
I have, but not that I know of. But whatever the case, that's pretty much where it stood right now is that, I want to talk to somebody in charge. The gentleman that I did talk to, the supervisor, the guy I was texting with originally, he said to me that if there's any chance that you want to refuse this installation, he said that I'm going to have to, take your case and pass it on to the Peel region. And the region of Peel will be the one that will, investigate this and take this further as, that company that's doing the install for the water meters, it's a company called Neptune. I think they're doing most of the installations in Ontario anyway. And they would have no, discussion of this any further. It was going to be passed on to Peel, and they would, that would be the person that would be dealing with if I were to refuse. And I
Right.
remember saying multiple times to them that I'm not refusing this installation. That's not what's happening here. I just have some concerns, being in, the nature of the work that I'm doing. I'd like to talk to somebody about that, and I want to, iron this out. I want to know exactly what's involved in the installation and how you guys are going to do that, and if you would consider some of the concerns that I have. And that's pretty
Where you
much
left
where
off.
it left off. That's
So,
where it's been. We're pretty much the only ones in our neighborhood that don't have this installed. All my
right,
neighbors have it.
right,
And the most recent EMF inspection that I did actually is a client. He had one put on his home. And the gentleman that was there doing the install did a very nice job of reassuring him that there's no concerns whatsoever with the technology. The EMF, the batteries, I mean, you're going to talk about some of this stuff in a second, but he pretty much reassured him that there's no concerns whatsoever, which I'm sure that's what they're telling all the people that are getting this installed.
right. And I mean,
And I
at
have some
this
concerns. So I have some concerns.
Yeah, well, we both do. I mean, doing the line of work that we do, obviously, and talking about, how I'm EHS sensitive. Here we are, we have a house that we haven't used Wi-Fi since 2016. We've been carrying personal EMF protection devices since probably 2010. So we are very concerned about the EMF aspect to all of this. But the thing is at this point, that was my primary concern. I mean, there were other concerns that I had in terms of privacy, but I hadn't really thought about any of it because we hadn't received another notice until this morning. I didn't receive a notice, but I actually follow a woman named Jane Scarf. She's been a longtime legal advocate that's been going head to head on various different issues across Canada in terms of our civil liberties and our rights. And so recently I was a bit concerned because I had saw that this one woman decided not to get it installed and they shut off her water. And now I think she's essentially taken them to court because she is now dealing with health repercussions of having to carry water in and out of her home. This is something I am concerned about because number one, I'm concerned about the fact that we don't want this really. We really would prefer not to have it. And then on as a secondary precaution is the fact that there's so many other things to worry about in terms of getting these in your house, but that nobody else has really done anything to stand up against this, essentially, is what I'm saying. Like we've gone around and like Kevin's gone around and looked at the side of people's, because you can find, I'm not sure what the box is. You'll have to tell people what that is, but there is a box on the outside that you can tell runs into the house, but the meter itself gets installed within the home. And the biggest concern is like, number one, where are they going to install this thing in your home? And is it going to be like, adjacent a bedroom or something like that, where it's, emitting, and Kevin will talk about this very briefly because we don't have much time today, but we're just concerned about that stuff. But if you can pull up the petition that we got today. So there is a petition going around. Again, in terms of petitions, I don't know how much these things actually do, because I've signed dozens of these petitions during the pandemic on various different things. I probably signed dozens of them on 5G and other concerns that we had. But the thing that I wanted to point out today, which maybe if people are not concerned about the EMF aspect of all of this stuff, they'll be concerned about some of the other things that were mentioned in this petition. So again, this is the petition here. As you can see right now, again, only 2,000 people have signed it. But number one, apparently, and I didn't know anything about this. And again, I haven't even read through this entire petition. Right away when I saw this, I was like, we need to jump on here. We need to talk about this because I know that Kevin and I have been trying to essentially get answers out of the city and out of these companies for the last 6 months, and nobody is contacting us to let us know what all of this entails. So as you can see here, there are now concerns for fire and electrical hazards. I'm sure this has nothing to do with this because this was years ago, but I've literally watched 2 houses on our street go up in flames for other reasons. And I don't want that to happen to us. So if there are fire and electrical hazards that we need to know about, I think everybody needs to know about this, right? I just want to go through the 7 different things that people are concerned about in terms of these. I will include a link down below to this petition so that you can read through the various different things that is happening currently. Again, they're giving you examples of like the fact that these, I guess, contain, Kevin, a lithium ion, which there are concerns for.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are concerns that these things catch fire, essentially. Maybe not so much in just the smart meters, but we're seeing that with all types of smart devices that, catch fire, and it's very difficult to put them out. Like one of the concerns that we had a while ago was the electric cars. This was happening with that too, right? Where they were catching fire, and essentially you can't just put water on a lithium ion battery and put out the fire, correct?
True. And the pollutants that they give off too, the fumes, they're very, very toxic too, which is another thing. But yeah, a lot of these things are actually catching fire. I wasn't aware of how many, especially up in the Saskatchewan area. A lot of issues they're having.
At 1:30 in the morning, I heard loud bangs on my wall. I thought it was somebody hitting with a bat. But then I looked out my bedroom window and I saw flames, and then I knew what happened because it happened a couple of years ago as well. The meter itself had dripped and started a fire down at the bottom too, as well as on my barbecue. Of course, then I called 911 and the fire department came, and Sask Power came shortly after that because they had to switch out the whole meter. This is all new. Like we could see it was scorched down here as well, but the wires were still fine. So they just cleaned off the wires, which I was surprised, but they cleaned them off and then they put a new box on and a new meter. Supposedly this is not a smart meter, because I don't want another one because it's very scary, especially in the middle of the night when you're sleeping and all of a sudden you have bangs like little explosions outside and then flames. It is very scary in the middle of the night.
They're talking about like how we're seeing this with vehicles that run on lithium ion batteries. So I think essentially now they're saying if this has got a lithium ion battery, it's also going to be a fire hazard. It says here, Utah family narrowly escapes fire triggered by scooter battery. But essentially we're thinking, well, they told you smart meters, smart cars were completely safe. They told you that all these scooters that were running on batteries were safe. And now we're only finding out now that these things have been in the market, that these things are catching fire. And I've even heard from a fireman who said, these things are terrible. We can't put them out. When they're called to say an accident with an electric car, they can't put these fires out.
Unplug, press a button, turn a dial, and I'm off. But silently. My first time driving an electric vehicle in order to learn something very important about them, how dangerous it is if they catch fire.
They burn so hot and so fast, it's hard for us to be able to extinguish those.
George Amon is the assistant chief of the Bearville Verde Fire Department. He's seen electrical vehicle fires, and they are no joke.
I compare it to a fully involved structure fire that y'all have seen on TV. It takes that many gallons to put out an EV fire if it's in thermal runaway. And we're going to have to either shut down the roadway or isolate the area because all the smoke and fire has a lot of chemicals in it.
Amon said EV fires can get up to 1,400 degrees. A typical structure fire is about 1,000. So if it's too risky to get close and too hot to put out with water, they use this fire blanket.
The blanket is big enough to cover an electrical vehicle to be able to smother out the fire or keep it in check while we're waiting for it to cool down.
It sounds like a hazmat situation.
It is, yes.
Wow,
Yeah.
and that is so different than a normal car fire.
It is, yeah. All the smoke and anything that we get on our personal gear, bunker gear.
Which is why he's hoping more research will be done to keep their gear and training top notch. Courtney Friedman, KSAT 12 News.
So can you imagine if these things were to catch fire in your home with these with the smart meters? How are you going to put this out, right? Essentially, so I think that's one of the major concerns people have right now. Secondary concern is the health risks for EMF radiation. Kevin and I have talked about EMF radiation for the last, for us personally, it's been going on almost 2 decades, but for the last decade, we've talked about the dangers of non-ionizing radiation in your home. And the things that we have seen and people have called us to complain about, like, after they installed this in my house, or after I got this smart device, or when I use my phone, my hand falls asleep, or when I put my phone to my head, I get dizzy or I get headaches. So now people are starting to notice the same effects from the smart meters, like, headaches, dizziness, fatigue, sleep disturbances, increased stress levels, potential long-term neurological and cellular damage. These are not like little things. These are things that there is plenty of organizations that I've shared in the past, but Canadians for Safe Technology brought this up, that they were very concerned about all of the health effects on EMF exposure and our physiology. So that's another concern with these smart meters that we have. The third one, and again, there's a bunch of data there and information. And again, I'm going to go through this really quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But if you can go down to the third one is breach of privacy. So that's another thing that we're really concerned about. Kevin will tell you a little bit more about how often these things are pinging you, I think you said, or they're reading. So essentially they're collecting data back like every, what did you say it was? Like 13 to 14 seconds or something like that?
Yeah, 15 seconds or something like that. Yeah, it depends on the technology that it's used. I mean, there's different communication protocols they can use, but yeah, they're continuously, connecting to it.
Right. And then the concern that we have there is that there could be a breach, right? Like, so all this stuff is smart technology. All this stuff is going to be connected to the grid. So say you have somebody who hacks into the system and decides to turn your water off or starts reading your data. Do we really need people knowing when you turn on your sink, when you turn on the bathtub, when you're turning on your showers, when you're running anything in your house, essentially? Because that's what's going to happen with all of these smart devices. My concern is you have somebody who's working at a company somewhere, right? Because they find that sometimes these breaches are from internal employees or associates, right? So my concern, or even somebody from the outside that can hack into this stuff. Say you see a period every day, somebody's collecting information on your house every day, like, oh, from, 9 to 5, we don't see any activity with their water system or electrical systems. So during that time of the day, there's nobody home. I'm assuming you can see where my concern is here, where people are essentially watching you. I don't need people looking at everything that I'm doing in my home consistently all day long. And I think that's where we're going with all of these smart devices to attach them to the smart grid and the smart cities, right? So another one, which I think is really interesting, because this is the concern that I had about the first meters, was that after people had the electrical meters put in, people were finding unexplained spikes in their billing. So apparently, even the water systems now, I think it's in Regina, Saskatchewan, people are complaining that their water bill went up. And so now people are kind of combating this issue as well with their billing companies, because they're like, you guys said that this was going to save on water, and yet here we are now having to pay higher water bills. Another concern, especially with where everything is at right now. They keep saying that we're under the radar for inflation here in Canada, but when I talk to real people living in cities, everybody is struggling financially now. I really don't think we want to be paying more for our water right now, or, even using our taxpayer dollars to install these things all across the cities. There's nothing wrong with the meter that we have now. So essentially, my concern is, why change something that isn't broken, right? We know why they probably want to install these things, but anyway, this is where we get into the fifth concern that people have, is the waste of taxpayer money. Transmitters are failing ahead of schedule. So they were showing that these were supposed to last for 20 years, but now they're saying that they think they're only going to last about 11 to 12 years. And in order to change this is going to cost $5.4 million of taxpayer dollars. So again, money that the country doesn't essentially have right now. So that was our other concern there. Then you got concern number 6. This is all about, forced compliance and violation of property rights. We should have a choice on whether we want to install these in our house. From what I understand, when they did this in Vegas years ago, those that opted out of these meters had to pay, I think, a little bit more on your bill. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I was talking to a gentleman the other day that said he is paying now $40 extra. I believe, I have to double check. He's paying like $40 or $50 extra, just simply for not wanting to comply with this and put this equipment into his home. So there's another concern I have. I mean, if we were to opt out, I think I'd rather pay the additional money to opt out of it. I don't see why we have to pay anything additional, but that is something else that people are concerned about. And again, you can read about that there. Number 7 is environmental and water impact of lithium-based smart meters. So here we have a bunch of advocates all over the world worried about climate change. You're worried about our oceans. You're worried about our environment. But I don't think people understand or fully comprehend how damaging it is to mining for lithium. Am I correct?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's lots of processes involved in how you actually get lithium.
Right.
A lot of chemical processes and a lot of very invasive things that you need to do to get lithium in order to make these batteries. So it's very...
Yeah.
wasteful.
And yeah, it's wasteful and it's very damaging to the environment, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and the thing is that's funny about this is it's not that it's happening to our environment. It's like, for instance, they've got a few different points here that they're saying lithium mining is slowly sinking Chile's salt flats, study shows. So like the more lithium we pull from the ground, the worse we are damaging not only natural habitats, our landscapes, but yet this is all being done under the guise of this is not only safe technology, but it's eco-friendly. Everything is eco-friendly. Like everything should go over to these lithium ion smart technologies, but they're not eco-friendly. We're finding out now that these things are in fact more polluting to the environment than what they're letting on, is what I'm essentially saying. So I think that's the last point there. We just wanted to really discuss some of this stuff today. Of course, I'm probably going to sign this petition. I don't know how much it's going to do. But I think what's more important is getting people to speak up, call your local suppliers, ask them questions, put them on the spot, because the thing is unless we start doing that, nothing is going to be done about anything at this point. So I find what I think is interesting is just ignoring them is not a good tactic either. You do need to reach out. You do need to talk to these people. But on the flip side, they've essentially left us alone. Maybe now they'll be calling us if they see this video. But they've essentially left us alone. It's been, I would say, 6 to 7 months. We've gotten multiple notices, but it's not like we're refusing. We just want answers on these 7 different topics. We want to know how having one of these installed in the house is going to benefit us, Canadian citizens, in any which way, or how it's not damaging, or it's not going to, affect our health, or affect, how much we have to pay on our bills, or affect the environment. That the problem with these people is, and I think Kevin experienced this, is you talk to somebody and they're like, oh, here's the technology. And this is like, here's what do they call them? Like the schematics? What do they call those?
Well, you can get that from all the spec sheets, the data sheets of the devices, right? You can get an understanding that way.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, when we asked them about the technology, that's all they sent us. That's not the questions that we wanted to ask them. The questions that we wanted to ask them was in regards to these 7 different concerns that we have. And I can almost guarantee that we're not going to get answers. Would you say we're probably not going to get answers on these 7
No,
different
they're the people doing the install and the people in charge are assuring us that everything is safe.
Yes.
I've heard this from multiple people who have gotten this installed. They've assured them, don't worry, it's safe. So this is what's happening out there.
Yeah. And so essentially at this point, we're not asking for we're not asking about the equipment itself specifically, although that's important for us to know, but we want to know how this affects the other 7 things that I've just mentioned there. And that's our biggest concern. And I think, people think, okay, because from what I get, there are some people that are not concerned about the EMFs. There are a lot of people out there that still believe non-ionizing radiation does not harm you in any way, shape, or form. I think we've put a lot of information out there in the last 10 years to show you that there's quite the contrary. This is very damaging in subtle ways, right? It's not going to happen maybe overnight. But, when you're being consistently exposed to these things, when you start to look at how the brain works, the heart works, the autonomic nervous system works, how this, causes calcium influx and it really disrupts the calcium channels in your body, the picture becomes very clear that this is not something that you want to have or be around consistently, especially not around, say, your children.
Then is a study where we took 10 autistic children and went back to the sleeping location where the mother was when she was pregnant with that child and compared it with the sleeping location of a mother that gave birth to healthy children. We had 10 mothers in that group, 10 mothers in this group, and in the group of the autistic children we found that the measurements that we got for the microwave exposure in the sleeping location of where the mother was when she was pregnant with her child was elevated compared to the group of children that were normal. The same measurement we got by measuring body voltage. This is the exposure just to the ambient field, electric field in the home created by the electric wires in the wall. Found the same number, that the that the exposure, that the electric charge that is built up in the body was by the factor of 10 times more in the sleeping location where the mother was sleeping when she was pregnant with her child. And with that, the exposure to man-made electromagnetic fields has become the first factor that could be isolated ever in autism that could predict autism. I can go to the home of a pregnant mother now, take those measurements, and give her a reasonable assessment what her chances are to give birth to a child that will later be diagnosed as autistic. Now, as you can imagine, I was not able to publish the study. Nobody was interested. There was 10 children, was too small a group to say something, even though the differences are so dramatic that even the 10 children led to a huge statistical difference. But I wasn't able to publish it because of the special interests that are now have found their way into the medical journals and the peer-reviewed journals. I think it's important to say that now the communications industry has become the largest lobbying industry in politics, larger than big pharma. In fact, by a factor of 3 times more powerful than the pharmaceutical industry, which used to be the most powerful arm, bending the decisions in Washington and in all Western governments for that purpose. So we weren't surprised when I wasn't able to publish these data, but it made us even more aware of the fact that we need what is called preconception healthcare. If somebody is planning on becoming pregnant, moms and dads need to know this information, that they have to protect the sleeping location of the mother from these fields that are absolutely tweaking the epigenome and the genes of the fetus that grows in there, predicting that this child will never reach its true genetic potential later in life.
You know, we live in a 3-story home, but what about people who live in bungalows? This may be installed, you know, or maybe if you're living in a townhouse, maybe they're going to be attaching all these to the end of a townhouse, especially if you're an N unit, which we've seen multiple times, which is absolutely terrible, where all the smart meters go on one house at the end of the unit. Or, you know, what if you have bedrooms or a main living space where they're going to install these? I mean, we have solutions for if you've already got these, because I don't want to freak people out, because people do.
Yeah, but the argument that I've gotten was not an argument, but when I did talk to the gentleman on the phone, told him a little bit about my concerns. He said there's not really anything to worry about as far as the EMF concerned, is because most people are exposed to way, way more electromagnetic radiation, like with their phone. Most people are glued to their phone all day long, and he is right.
Yes.
So there is that aspect to it as well with most people. And, I go to a lot of people's homes. Most people, the electromagnetic radiation, the intensity levels is extremely high as it is without this smart meter, this smart water meter.
Right.
So for a lot of people that don't really take this seriously and don't try to reduce their levels, try and, use their cell phone safely, then is this really going to be, that big of a deal for a lot of people? Well, there's a good argument on their side for this, right? Because
right. I agree.
We're exposed to way more intensity levels in our home from other sources already, and he is right.
Funded their friendly scientists, they've attacked critical science, independent science, they've put their own people onto advisory boards. All that said, that's resulted in, I think, the message coming across from the mainstream media, frankly, that cell phones are safe enough, shall we say. However, that point of view took a major hit just last week, the night before we released our story. There was a peer review by independent scientists of the biggest study that the United States government has had to date on cell phone radiation. This was a study by the U.S. National Toxicology Program, that's part of the National Institutes of Health. The study was commissioned by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and released some preliminary findings in February, and then those findings were peer-reviewed by independent scientists last week. And those independent scientists finally concluded that there was, quote, clear evidence, unquote, clear evidence that cell phone radiation can cause cancers. And notably, those independent scientists upgraded the confidence level of that and other findings by this National Toxicology Program. So what that seemed to do was to confirm the suspicions by outsiders that the National Toxicology Program brass, the people up at the top, were trying to downplay this study, because it was the very same data that had been released in 2016, and when that data was released in 2016, it came with a public health warning by the National Toxicology Program. Then in 2018, and back in February, they tried to downplay this. So it's very significant that last week these independent scientists said, oh no, there is clear evidence here that cell phones can cause cancer. Now, before you all worry out there that you're having the equivalent of a cigarette habit, let me just say that the evidence is not yet definitive of how high the risk is for cancer, and genetic damage is another concern here. But it is definitely, it seems, a risk. If you look at the scientific data that is compiled by the National Institutes of Health, the actual studies that they catalog there, the vast majority of them do indicate that there are health impacts of this technology, of this radiation, I should say, according to Henry Lai, a professor at the University of Washington who's analyzed all of this, and we talked with him in some detail. So there are things you can do. The main thing you can do as a consumer is to minimize your use of your cell phone. Use a landline telephone whenever you can. And if you must use a cell phone, always use earbuds and use it for as little at the time as possible. Don't go on and on. Have your phone call and complete it. And in general, you want to try and minimize the risk. Again, I am not a pediatrician. I'm not a doctor here. You can talk to organizations like the American Pediatrics Association, which, by the way, told the Federal Communications Commission 5 years ago that they needed to revisit this question because their standards weren't adequate. The FCC has not done that, but you can talk to them. You can talk to a group called the Environment Health Trust, and they will give you more information on this. That's really interesting that you talk about the FCC, and they haven't done that, because the former head of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, was Tom Wheeler. In 1999, then the president of the Cellular Telecommunications and Internet Association, Thomas Wheeler, spoke to ABC News 2020. Listen carefully.
I believe that the cellular phone is safe. Our industry has gone out and aggressively asked the question, can we find a problem? And the answer that has come back is that there is nothing that has come up in the research that suggests that there is a linkage between the use of a wireless phone and health effects.
So that was, yes, Thomas Wheeler, who was President Obama's pick as FCC chair, speaking to Brian Ross on ABC. Mark Hertzgaard, can you talk about his role? And that was a lie.
So I just wanted to mention that too, right? But you know, for people like me and people like others who are trying to keep their homes as clean as possible, you know, and we have, you know, to most degree, you know, we don't use Wi-Fi or any Bluetooth devices or anything like that. So
we don't use LEDs.
If someone were to put this on the side of my home, especially where, you know, where I sit and do most of my work or sleep, and I were to go and try and measure that, I probably would, I would notice it. It would be a stronger influence in my environment because I've already done a lot of remediation, right? But most people haven't. And he's got a good, that is a good argument that he has, is that you guys are already exposed to way more in your own home. What are you worried about this for? Right. So I just wanted to mention that. So it is important.
Yes. And I mean, but then my concern there is that shouldn't be the only concern that people have. The concerns that we have are the 7 different points that I just went through. That's just one of the concerns that we have. The other concerns are, you know, the breach of privacy, destroying the environment further. Your water bills are going to go up. And not only that,
the batteries too.
And the batteries, is there a potential for a fire risk here? Like, that's something that I'm very concerned about. Like, especially after I've seen what I've seen out there about these electric cars or scooters catching fire and they can't put those fires out. And not only that, but when you're trying to put them out with water, they release so many contaminants into the environment when you're trying to put it out with water because they just won't go out. So these are some of the things that we want people to start thinking about and start asking them. Like, is there a potential for this, right? Because I don't think enough people are asking questions. Unfortunately, I don't think enough people are asking. There were not a lot of people asking any questions really during the last 5 years. And this is just yet another one to add to it. And again, we're not here to create more stress or anxiety around this. It's just that we wanted to bring this up because we think it is an issue where there's not enough transparency around what is in fact happening in terms of installing these technologies into or on our homes, essentially, is what we're saying. I mean, again, if you have them in your homes, there are things that you can do if EMF is your concern. The other concerns, honestly, I mean, we could help you with some of that.
Maybe we can touch on that too, because I've had a client who's been concerned about this, and I've been working with them, and they were threatening to shut his water off. Like, they went to this level. He actually refused it. He said he didn't want it, and they came back and said, "We're going to turn your water off." Period.
Okay.
And that's
what? Check our time though. How much time do we have?
We should be okay just for a few minutes here. But basically, what I did, and in that case, if that's the situation that you're in, I mean, there are a few things that you can do to help, because this smart water meter comes in two parts. It's got a transmitter that usually mounts on the outside of your house, and it's got the water meter that goes right on your cold water pipe that comes into your house, right? So the two are connected. But it's that transmitter that's mounted on the outside of the house. That's what's giving off the electromagnetic radiation that's connecting to the main frame. And we got about 10 minutes left here. So
I'll let you wrap it up.
Basically, what we did was that I told him that, in a case of the smart water meter, the intensity of that radiation drops off with distance significantly. So I would suggest, if you're going to put this on the side of your house, pick a side of your house that's furthest away from any of your bedrooms and where you sit and do most of your work. And that's exactly what he did. And the gentleman that did the installation, he was very nice. He actually did a lot of extra work for him and ran a wire all the way across the basement to the other side of the house. And they put it on the outside of the house. So it was as furthest away as possible from, the sleeping areas, which is good. And we did all that. And the levels I was measuring was, especially when you got up near the bedroom, it was almost, you couldn't even measure it. So there are some things that you can do if you are being forced to put this inside your house. And it's going to be a little bit of work on their part to, hopefully they're cooperative and want to work with you and are willing to do some of this, because most of them, I think, they're just going to do the easiest installation, whatever's easiest, right next to the water meter, whatever wall that is. If it's right next to your bedroom, who cares? They're going to do the least amount of work as possible, right? But if you make a stink about it and you bring this to their attention, then they just might work with you. And I've had cases where this has happened.
And I mean, if you don't want to do it, again, it sounds like you're going to have to deal with your municipalities on that. And, for us, if we don't want to put one in our house, it looks like we're going to have to go to the region appeal. I don't know if we're going to do that just yet. Again, I can't really tell you who to reach out to here, because it wouldn't even be us. Like, I mean, if you want the help with the shielding, if you've got one already, yeah, definitely you could reach out to us. Some of the other people that might know a little bit more about this would be the people that, I guess, essentially set up the petition. I think, well, the person that I got it from was Jane Scarf. She, in fact, was the one that I found the petition on her website today on Facebook. Another organization you might want to reach out to, which I was a part of them, they're having a little bit of issues with their website right now, is Canadians for Safe Technology. Frank, I think his name is Frank Clegg, is one of the CEOs that runs that nonprofit organization. Magda Havis might be somebody else that you might want to reach out to. She's done a lot. She's been an advocate for this stuff for the last, I don't even know how many years, Kevin, 20, maybe longer, 20 years, if not longer. She's got a lot of data that you can look up there on the effects of non-native EMF and how that affects the body. She's got a YouTube channel. She's really receptive. I actually have reached out to her a couple of times over the years, and she's responded back to me pretty quickly. So again, these are just some of the places that you want to go and take a look. Another is another person to look up some of her work is, what's her name again? You've actually had you've looked at a lot of her work a lot of her stuff over the years. What's her name? She's out of the US though. She's not from here.
I don't know. Not sure.
Okay, if I find her contact information, I'll put it down below because I know I even have her in our bio. I've got a video.
Put everything in the
Yeah, I'll put
description.
everything down below. So if you guys wanted to look into some of this stuff further, see where you could, possibly connect with. Again, I'm assuming most of this is going to be speaking to your municipalities and talking to the city about this stuff.
And don't be afraid to speak up. I think that's the thing. Don't just let them bully you around, and
Right.
do this nicely. You don't have to be hostile about it. But speak up and voice your opinion about this.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing. I mean, for years, unfortunately, I wish more people would have been, especially on our street. I wish more people would have stood up for this. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people installed it not knowing what they were doing. They were just like, okay, they want to do this, let them do it. But yeah, I guess this will be something else that we'll be discussing with them. And
because they need to know. They need to know that you can't just continue to use a lot of these technologies that are showing to cause some issues.
Right.
You just can't. We got to speak up, or else they'll never change. They'll never do anything different.
There just won't be any change. There will be change, but it won't benefit any of us, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Because if nobody says anything about it, they'll just continue to do whatever they want.
And we'll keep everybody posted on our situation because we don't have it yet, and I don't know what's going to come of this. I don't know. But I'm going to be very vocal about expressing my concerns about what I know about it, and I'm going to be doing some videos on my channel too to get into more of the technology and what I'm finding. So stay tuned for that as well.
Okay, guys. And I think that's it because we literally have a couple of minutes left before we get cut off here. That's it. So if you wanted any more information on any of that stuff, it'll be linked down below this video. And again, if you want to watch any of the stuff that Kevin posts, that's going to be on our other channel. This will be on the Healing Hands Duo, probably be on his channel as well. We'll probably post it in a few different places. But again, if you want to contact Kevin, that's at energyalignmentsolutions.com. So energyalignmentsolutions.com. I'll put that down below as well. Again, this is the healinghandsduo.com that we do a bunch of different stuff with both of these businesses. So that's it for today. And I hope you guys all have a great week, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.